My name is Evelyn Harper, and at 62, I thought I knew who I was. To my son, Daniel, I was Mom, the one who always had the answers. To my grandchildren, Lily and Max, I was Grandma Evie, the bringer of cinnamon rolls and bedtime stories. To my neighbors in our quiet Seattle suburb, I was the woman who showed up at block parties with a warm smile and a homemade pie, no matter how heavy my heart felt. But last Mother's Day, everything I believed about my family and myself shattered. This is the story of how I discovered a strength I didn't know I had, a strength no one saw coming. It was a radiant Sunday morning, May 8, 2025, when I pulled my old Honda into the driveway of Daniel's modern two-story house in Bellevue. The sun glinted off the neatly trimmed hedges, and the roses I'd helped plant last spring bloomed in vibrant reds and pinks, their petals catching the light like tiny mirrors. I wore my favorite navy blue dress, its subtle floral pattern making me feel elegant, like the young woman who'd once dreamed of a big life. In my arms, I carried a tray of cinnamon rolls, their glaze still warm and dripping, and a bouquet of lilies for my daughter-in-law, Claire. Mother's Day was supposed to be my day, a celebration of all I'd given my family. I wanted it to be perfect. Grandma Evie, squealed Lily, 7, her freckled face lighting up as she flung open the front door. Her blonde curls bounced, and her blue eyes, Daniel's eyes, sparkled with excitement. Max, 4, toddled behind, clutching a toy truck, his chubby arms wrapping around my legs. Their hugs were like a warm blanket, easing the ache in my knees from hours in the kitchen. For a moment, everything felt right. Daniel appeared in the hallway, phone pressed to his ear. "Yeah, I'll call you back," he muttered, giving me a quick nod before disappearing into the living room. His distracted greeting stung, but I brushed it off. Claire emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her smile was polite but cold, like one you'd give a stranger. "Evelyn, you made it," she said, her voice clipped. "Come in, we've got a surprise for you." The word surprise sent a flutter through my chest. I followed her to the living room, where Lily and Max bounced on the plush gray couch, and Daniel sat scrolling through his phone. The coffee table held a teapot, delicate china cups, and a plate of store-bought cookies, my cinnamon rolls nowhere in sight. I set the tray down beside the lilies, feeling a twinge of disappointment. "They're busy," I told myself. "It's fine. Sit, Grandma, sit." Lily tugged at my hand, pulling me onto the couch. Her enthusiasm warmed me, and I smiled as Claire handed me a cream-colored envelope tied with a satin ribbon. "This is from all of us," she said, her eyes flicking to Daniel, who finally looked up from his phone. "Read it out loud, okay? The kids want to hear it." My fingers trembled with anticipation as I opened the envelope, expecting a heartfelt card, perhaps with Lily's colorful drawings or Max's scribbled hearts. The card was simple, with a watercolor floral border and "Happy Mother's Day" in elegant script. My heart swelled, and I began to read aloud in a clear, proud voice, imagining the sweet words my family had chosen for me. "Roses are red, violets are blue," my voice faltered as I scanned the next line. I blinked, certain I'd misread. But there it was, in bold, handwritten ink, "You're a heavy burden, we're tired of you." My throat tightened, and I forced myself to continue, each word a dagger. "No one wants you here, your time is through. Love, your family, who's done with you." The room went silent, the kind of silence that presses against your eardrums, heavy and suffocating. Then Daniel snorted, a sharp, mocking laugh that cut through the quiet. Claire covered her mouth, but her shoulders shook with barely contained giggles. Even Lily, caught up in her parents' amusement, giggled, though her eyes darted to me with confusion. Max, clutching his truck, just stared, his little brow furrowed. "Did you see her face?" Claire said, wiping a tear from her eye, her voice bright with amusement. "Oh, Evelyn, you should have seen yourself." Daniel leaned forward, grinning. "Come on, Mom, it's just a joke. Lighten up." My hands shook as I held the card, the words blurring through a veil of tears. The cinnamon rolls sat untouched on the table, their sweet scent now cloying. The lilies drooped in their vase, as if wilting in shame. I felt like I was shrinking, the room swallowing me whole. A joke? I whispered, my voice barely audible over the pounding in my chest. Yeah, don't be so dramatic, Claire said, still chuckling. You always take things too seriously. Daniel picked up the card from where it had slipped to the floor. Look, Mom, we're just saying, maybe it's time to think about other options. He paused, his tone shifting to something colder. You know, retirement homes. Somewhere you'd be more comfortable, with people your age. Retirement homes? The words hit like a physical blow. My son, the boy I'd raised alone after his father's death, wanted to ship me off like an old piece of furniture, discarded and forgotten. My vision blurred, and I gripped the arm of the couch to steady myself. Lily tugged at my sleeve, her voice small. Grandma, why are you crying? Before I could answer, Claire pulled her away. She's fine, sweetie. Just being emotional, like always. I stood, my legs trembling like a newborn foal's, and grabbed my purse. I should go, I mumbled, my voice breaking. Okay, Mom, Daniel said, his eyes already back on his phone. We'll call you later. I walked to my car, the navy dress feeling like a costume, not the armor I'd thought it was. The drive home was a blur, the card's words echoing in my mind, you're a heavy burden. No one wants you here. I pulled into my apartment complex, a modest brick building in Seattle's Capitol Hill, and climbed the stairs to my one-bedroom unit. Inside, I sank into my armchair, the one where I'd rocked Daniel to sleep as a baby, where I'd read him stories, where I'd dreamed of our future together. The tears came then, hot and unrelenting, soaking the collar of my dress. But as the hours passed, something else stirred beneath the pain. Anger. Clarity. A spark of defiance. I wasn't a burden. I was the one who'd held them up for years. And it was time they learned who Evelyn Harper really was. To understand how I got to this moment, I need to take you back. I was 22 when my world fell apart. My husband, Thomas, died in a construction accident in 1986, leaving me with 3-year-old Daniel and a mountain of grief. We were living in a small town in Oregon then, and I had no family nearby, no safety net. I sat in our tiny apartment, holding Daniel as he sobbed for his daddy, and made a promise to myself he would never want for anything. I would give him the life Thomas and I had dreamed of. We moved to Seattle, where I found work as a seamstress in a factory, stitching curtains and tablecloths until my fingers bled. The hours were long, the pay barely enough to cover rent, but every penny went to Daniel, his clothes, his school supplies, his little league uniforms. I'd come home exhausted, my hands aching, but seeing him smile made it worth it. When he was 17 and got accepted to the University of Washington for computer science, my heart soared. But tuition was steep, and my savings were thin. I sold my mother's antique sapphire ring, the only heirloom I had, to cover the first year. Mom, are you sure? Daniel asked, his eyes wide with worry as I handed him the check. Your education is everything, I said, smiling through my tears. This is for you. I took a second job cleaning houses on weekends, my back screaming from scrubbing floors, but when Daniel walked across the stage at graduation, degree in hand, I cried with pride. We did it, Mom, he said, hugging me tight in his cap and gown. I thought that was my greatest achievement, the moment I'd worked for my whole life. When he met Claire, a marketing manager from Portland with a sharp wit and polished charm, I was overjoyed. She seemed to adore Daniel, and I welcomed her like a daughter. I paid $15,000 for their wedding, dipping into the savings I'd scraped together over years. The reception was beautiful, white roses, fairy lights, a band playing soft jazz. Mom, this is too much, Daniel said when I handed him the check. It's for your future, I said, my heart full. When they bought their house in Bellevue, a sleek modern home with a view of the Cascades, I gave them $30,000 for the down payment. Evelyn, we can't accept this, Claire said, but I insisted. It's what mothers do, I told her. When Lily was born, followed by Max 2 years later, I became their full-time babysitter. I'd drive to their house at 6 a.m., make pancakes with smiley faces, pack lunches, take them to the park. I'd push Lily on the swings until my arms ached, read Max stories until my voice grew hoarse. I loved every minute, even when my knees protested from crawling on the floor during hide-and-seek. "Evelyn, you're a lifesaver," Claire would say, kissing my cheek as she rushed off to work. But over time, the warmth faded. The thank yous became rare. My suggestions about the kids' bedtimes or too much screen time were met with eye rolls. "Evelyn, we've got this," Claire would snap, her tone sharp. When Daniel lost his job during the 2020 tech layoffs, I started sending them $600 a month to cover bills. "It's just temporary," Daniel said, but they never asked me to stop, even after he landed a new job at a startup. I paid $2,500 for Lily's preschool tuition, $3,000 for Max's ear surgery when he had a bad infection. I bought them school supplies, winter coats, even a new stroller when theirs broke. I thought I was helping my family, holding them together. But somewhere along the way, I became their ATM. The slide started small but grew sharper. Last year, I overheard Claire on the phone with her sister while I was in their kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner. "Evelyn's always here," she said, her voice low but clear. "It's exhausting. I wish she'd give us some space." I stood frozen, the knife trembling in my hand, a tray of brownies I'd baked cooling on the counter. Space? I'd given them everything, my time, my money, my heart. Then came the exclusions. They forgot to invite me to Max's 4th birthday party, saying it was just family. I saw the photos on Facebook, Claire's parents blowing up balloons, laughing with the kids, while I sat home alone, staring at the gift I'd wrapped for Max, a toy fire truck he'd begged for. When I confronted Daniel, he shrugged. "It was a small thing, Mom. We thought you'd be bored." Bored? I'd spent weeks planning that gift, imagining Max's smile. But I swallowed my hurt, telling myself it was a misunderstanding. Then, last winter, I caught pneumonia, my fever spiking to 102. I called Daniel, my voice weak. "Can you bring some soup or check on me?" I asked. "Mom, we're swamped," he said. "Work's crazy, and Claire's got a deadline. Can't you manage?" He hung up, and I lay in bed, shivering, alone. My neighbor, Mrs. Larson, a retired nurse, brought me chicken noodle soup and made sure I took my antibiotics. She checked on me every day for a week, while my son didn't call once. The humiliations piled up, each one a small cut, until the Mother's Day card sliced me open. That night, in my armchair, I saw their ingratitude with painful clarity. I'd given them $66,000 over the past 6 years, $30,000 for the house, $15,000 for the wedding, $14,400 in monthly payments, $2,500 for preschool, $3,000 for medical bills, plus countless smaller expenses for school supplies, clothes, and gifts. I'd mended their clothes, watched their kids, cooked their meals. And yet, they saw me as a burden, a punchline. The next morning, I woke with a fire in my chest, a resolve I hadn't felt in years. I walked to my bedroom and opened the wooden box where I kept my important documents, bank statements, old photos, and a secret I'd never shared with Daniel or Claire. When my mother died 10 years ago, she left me a small rental property in Tacoma, a one-bedroom apartment that brought in $1,500 a month. I'd saved every cent in a separate account, thinking it would go to Daniel's future, maybe a college fund for the kids. I also had investments from my late Aunt Margaret's estate, bonds and stocks worth $200,000, quietly growing while I lived frugally on my Social Security checks. They thought I was scraping by, a poor widow in a modest apartment. They had no idea I had $270,000 tucked away, a safety net I'd built in silence. I sat at my kitchen table, a cup of coffee going cold, and made a plan. First, I called my bank. "I want to cancel all transfers to my son's account," I told the manager, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. "And close the joint account we opened for emergencies." The manager hesitated, her voice cautious through the phone. "Mrs. Harper, are you sure?" These are significant changes. Absolutely, I said, my tone firm. It's my money, and I'm done giving it away. Next, I called my lawyer, Mr. Thompson, who'd handled my affairs since Thomas's death. I need to change my will, I said, standing in my living room, the morning light streaming through the window. I explained my decision. My savings would go to a local charity for single mothers, a cause close to my heart as a widow who'd raised Daniel alone. I set up a trust for Lily and Max, accessible when they turn 25, but only if they maintain a genuine relationship with me. No visits coerced by their parents, no letters written for money. Daniel and Claire would inherit nothing. Are you certain, Evelyn? Mr. Thompson asked, his voice gentle but concerned. This is a big step. I've never been more certain, I said, my hand steady as I gripped the phone. I've spent my life giving. It's time I value myself. Finally, I called a real estate agent about the Tacoma property. I want to sell it, I told her, my voice clear. And I'm moving to Charleston. Why Charleston? I'd visited once, years ago, on a rare vacation with a friend. The cobblestone streets, the salty ocean breeze, the vibrant markets, they'd felt like a promise of a new beginning, a life I could claim for myself. The agent estimated the property could sell for $500,000, maybe more in the hot market. With that and my $270,000 in savings, I could start over, not as a mother or grandmother, but as Evelyn Harper, a woman with dreams of her own. The next day, Tuesday, I sat at my kitchen table with a stack of elegant stationery I'd bought years ago but never used. The paper was cream-colored, with a faint embossed border, and it felt right for what I needed to say. I wrote 2 letters, my pen moving with purpose, no hesitation. The first was to Daniel. Dear Daniel, by the time you read this, I'll be on a plane to Charleston. I've sold the Tacoma property you didn't know about, and I've canceled all financial support. The $600 a month, the joint account, the endless help, it's done. Over 6 years, I gave you $66,000, $30,000 for your house, $15,000 for your wedding, $14,400 in monthly payments, $2,500 for Lily's preschool, $3,000 for Max's surgery, and more. I gave you my time, my love, my heart. But you and Claire saw me as a burden, a joke to be laughed at. The Mother's Day card wasn't funny, it was a mirror showing me your true feelings. I've changed my will. My money will go to women who value kindness, not ingratitude. Lily and Max have a trust, but only if they choose to know me for who I am, not what I can give. Don't call me for money. Don't send the kids to guilt me. If you want your mother back, you'll have to prove you value me, not my wallet. Your mother, Evelyn. The second letter was to Claire. Dear Claire, I welcomed you as a daughter, but you saw me as an inconvenience, an old woman taking up space. I heard you complain about my presence, felt your coldness. I paid for your wedding, your house, your children's needs, $66,000 over the years, but you mocked me with that card. I'm not the frail widow you think. I have $270,000 in savings and a property worth $500,000. I'm moving to Charleston to live for myself, not to serve you. You'll need to stand on your own now. If you ever see me as more than a burden, you know where to find me. Evelyn. I sealed the letters in envelopes, my hand steady, and left them on my coffee table, where Daniel would find them when he inevitably came looking for an explanation, or more money. I packed a single suitcase, folding my navy dress carefully, though I wasn't sure I'd ever wear it again. It felt like part of a life I was leaving behind. I booked a first-class ticket to Charleston, a luxury I'd never allowed myself. If I was starting over, I'd do it in style. On Friday, I boarded the plane, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and exhilaration. As the plane climbed above the clouds, the Seattle skyline fading below, I felt lighter than I had in decades. The weight of my family's expectations, their ingratitude, their laughter, it all fell away. I closed my eyes, picturing Charleston's sunlit streets, and smiled. In Charleston, I rented a charming cottage near the Battery, its white shutters framing a view of the harbor where sailboats bobbed on turquoise waves. The air smelled of salt and magnolias, and for the first time in years, I breathed deeply, unburdened. I enrolled in a pottery class at a local studio, my hands rediscovering the joy of shaping clay, a hobby I'd loved as a girl but abandoned for motherhood. My first vase was lopsided, but the instructor, a kind woman named Susan, laughed and said, "It's got character, Evelyn. Just like you." I joined a book club at the local library, where women my age and younger welcomed me with open arms. We'd sit on a patio overlooking the Ashley River, sipping iced tea and debating novels, our laughter mingling with the breeze. I started a small baking business, selling my cinnamon rolls at a weekend market in Marion Square. The first time a customer, a young man with a southern drawl, said, "Evelyn, these are the best rolls I've ever tasted," I cried, not from sadness, but from a joy so pure it felt like sunlight in my chest. I'd walk along the waterfront at dusk, the sky painted in pinks and oranges, and think about the life I'd left behind. I'd given Daniel and Claire everything, $66,000, countless hours, endless love, but they'd seen only an old woman, a burden to be mocked. In Charleston, I was building something new, not for them, but for me. 6 months later, I received a letter in Lily's childish handwriting, scrawled in purple crayon. "Grandma Evie, I miss you. Why did you go away? I liked your pancakes." My heart ached, but I smiled, picturing her freckled face. I wrote back, inviting her to visit when she was older, promising to teach her how to make those smiley-faced pancakes. I included a small clay heart I'd made in my pottery class, hoping she'd keep it close. I heard through a mutual friend that Daniel and Claire were struggling without my financial help. Their credit card bills were piling up, and Claire had taken a second job. I felt a pang of guilt, but it passed quickly. I'd spent decades teaching them to take me for granted, to see me as a resource, not a person. In Charleston, I taught myself something different. I was Evelyn Harper, a woman with dreams, strength, and a life worth living. I stood on my cottage's porch one evening, watching the sunset over the harbor. The card's words, "You're a heavy burden," no longer stung. They'd been wrong. I wasn't a burden, I was a force, a woman who'd carried her family for years and now carried herself. At 62, I was free, and for the first time in my life, I was enough. The moral of A Mother's Hidden Strength is that self-worth and personal empowerment come from recognizing and valuing your own contributions, even when others take them for granted. Evelyn learns that her sacrifices for her family, though given out of love, do not define her value, and she finds true freedom by prioritizing her own happiness and independence. The story teaches that you must set boundaries and demand respect, even from those closest to you, to live a life true to yourself.